So these are the things we will need to complete our mixed media drawing. We will need a pencil, a fine point Sharpie, an ultra fine, a white and black color pencil. I have Crayola, but Prisma is fantastic as well. You will need an X-Acto blade and a pair of scissors. If you don't have an X-Acto blade at hand, that's okay. You can do most of your work with a pair of scissors today. So here is my three-hand contour that I completed in pencil. Your first step is you are going to identify which of your three hands you are going to have on top, in the middle, and furthest back. I recommend just putting a number by the ones that you would like in that order. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to use your large Sharpie, and I would like you to trace over your pencil lines. You don't need to worry about erasing them. And you are showing me that you understand overlap. So we'll have this one on top, and then when I do number 2, I'm not gonna go through my contour. Instead, I'm going to lift my pen, and I'm only going to mark where it shows or indicates the overlap, pushing this Y to the back. And then I will repeat for hand number 3. I'll trace this whole one, and then I am going to stop. I'm not going to go over or interject into hand number 2. I'm gonna make sure I lift my Sharpie and I do not go through it. Again, I wanna show top, middle, and back. All right, guys, after you've completed your overlap, where you show me one on top, one in the middle, and one in the back, you are going to choose your hand that you would like to do cross contour. Remember, cross contour lines are the internal line that show how the form is moving or rising. So we want to pay attention to outside and inside lines to help us determine the direction. I also like putting my opposite hand or my non-dominant hand in the position so I can physically see where things are raised, where my hand is a little squishier, and even where the shadows are. I'm gonna start in pencil first. That way, in case I mess up, I can erase. So let's start with the section over here. I'm going to follow this inside crease, and then I like to just flip-flop and go right to left. That way I'm gradually meeting in the middle. Now, as I work, my lines on my edges or closest to the creases are going to be close together to show that dark value. As I work my way to the middle or the high part of my hand, the line is going to both soften and widen to show the high point. So there's one. If I want to work on the section next to it, again, I'm going to follow this outside and inside line. I am going to work vertical this time in this section, just to show you that it's okay to change. They do not have to be the same direction every single time. So this is kind of the squishy part of my hand, so I know it's a little high right there. So I'm going to identify where that curve is, where it starts to change. And then I can go back, outside, back to inside. And my line starts to open up and change. Now let's go over here. So again, I'm gonna follow this inside crease on both the right and left side, close together. And again, I'll go flip-flop. That way I guarantee that I'm getting both shapes. You could identify the middle if you like, if that will help you. There is no wrong choice in terms of your path of drawing. You just want to make sure that you're lessening the value and the lines in the part that's highest on your hand. And then as you move towards the creases, you're increasing the amount of lines to show where the value is. Now when I start working on these fingers, I really want to pay attention to these internal creases. They're gonna help me figure out where my lines change direction. And if you don't have them from your initial drawing, you can just look at your hand and see where those creases are and add them. Now, when you run into these areas where the overlap of the initial pencil is, just draw right over it. And then, oh, I missed a spot with my Sharpie, so I'm gonna go in here and correct that. That's my ring, so I wanna make sure I have that. And I'm also gonna make that ring a vertical because I think I'm gonna make this horizontal right here. Now I know this finger's leading back and I have a line up here that I know it's there but I can't see it because I want to prove that overlap. So I'm just going to add these cross contour lines that follow that shape. That's why it's important you don't erase them because it gives you just a little bit more guidance for your cross contour. Like that you're really showing that curve. Now, because this section is behind, like if I bend it, I know that's further away, so I want to make sure that that value is darker than what is in front. So I'm going to add some in-between lines to make sure I'm pushing this section back visually. And I have All right, now that I feel pretty confident about what is happening here, I'm going to go over all my lines with ultra fine Sharpie. Don't use your fat Sharpie because you'll color in between them and you don't want that. You want to make sure you're showing that detail. All right, after this, we'll work on another hand. Once you're done with your cross contour hand, you're gonna need to pick a hand that you would like to shade in pencil. And I have a wood pencil, not a mechanical pencil, my kneaded eraser, and just an additional eraser in case I want to shade or erase a little bit more. Before you start shading, I want you to identify where your light source is. Like, where is the sun gonna be or your highlights going to be? I'm gonna just choose to make my light source right here. So this would be my little sun. It's gonna identify where all my light is coming from. In each of your remaining hands, you are gonna shade 9 or more shapes. So you're not gonna shade the whole hand, just like we did in cross contour. You're gonna identify several shapes, 9 shapes, that you are going to shade. So not every space is fully separated. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna identify the shapes that I would like to shade. So say I wanna shade this nail. I know that my light source is here, so I'm gonna just go down, identify my highlight, which should follow the shape of my object. So this is my whole shape. Next, I'm gonna find my next shape that I would like to shade, and I'm gonna follow it from here. So say I wanna shade this finger. I don't necessarily wanna shade here, so I'm gonna close off this shape based on one of my internal lines. So now this whole area is where I'm gonna shade. Now this space is closer to the light source, so my highlight is gonna be a little bit bigger. So this is the area that I'm gonna try and keep white. Notice that my highlight isn't on the direct edge of my object. I wanna make sure that it is a little further away because value always wraps around the entirety of a form. So I'm gonna shade this one, starting up here, so it's gonna be fading away from the light source to the shape that I have identified. And I'm using a wood pencil instead of a mechanical pencil, using the side of it just like we learned before. In slow motion, I'm kind of working in little ovals, and those ovals are constantly overlap, and that's what's blending my lead together. As I move further away from my highlight, my value is going to increase. I'm going to make sure that it's getting darker. So that means I'm going to increase my layering along with my pressure. Now, just like we did with cross contour, we identified the internal shape. I'm gonna make sure that I am shading with my shape. So following these outside lines and internal lines, making sure that my shading doesn't go flat. So keeping it at an arch and making sure that I'm not smearing it with my finger. Where I want it black, I'm gonna increase that pressure and fade away. Now you don't have to have black every time, but in your areas that are furthest away from the light, it's good to have those, really show that contrast. And remember, layering is part of it. It's not all pressure. So pressure and layer, small ovals. Now, right now I have a nice gradation going from dark, so black, dark gray, this middle gray, and then I just jumped straight to white. If I turn my pencil over, I can just work small ovals with my eraser, and I want to get rid of that defined highlight, making it a soft transition. And I do the same thing with my edge. I kind of just soften it. I don't want to have a defined outline like that cartoon bubble highlight. So this is nice. I can consider this area done. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here. So I start at the top where it's nice and light, and I'm gonna work around that highlight all the way down to the bottom, making sure that I am following the shape. And I don't have to have black every time. I could just have dark gray this time. But I do need to have that highlight each time. So see how I have that cartoon bubble? I want to erase that. Just gently, little circles with my pencil. Make sure that that's fading. Now if you get a harsh line, you just go back, layer a little bit more. Remember that shading is a layering process, back and forth, back and forth. It's not a mistake, you haven't ruined it. Just go back and layer in something else, either a layer of erasing or a layer of lead to help you build that smooth transition following your light source. I need to do this 9 times, so I'm gonna identify 9 shapes, And I can close my shapes, like say I want to do this, it's kind of interesting. Identify my highlight, make sure that it is following my sun and it's following my shape. So I'm going to do this as another one. This is a shape inside here, but I'm going to kind of skip this one because I have a value right there. So I'm going to go in here instead, close off this space, and then following my sun, I have a highlight right in here. And maybe I want 2 highlights because there's a section here. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I need to pick 5 more and then remember to shade towards this. So all my values are gonna go light to dark, and I'm gonna shade following my forms. After you're done with your pencil and you've shaded 9 or more shapes towards your light source, we're going to work on our last contour, which will be done in black color pencil. What I'd like everyone to do is get a piece of scrap paper out of your sketchbook just so you can test this out before you actually commit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just start by making a small rectangle. And I'm gonna do 2 actually. Gonna practice our light source skill. So I'm just gonna put a light source here. And then I'd like you to make like a jelly bean type shape. Since most of the shapes you'll be shading are not gonna be flat and square, they are going to be organic and kind of round. Now, when we were doing pencil, we identified the little highlight because we could erase it. But with this black color pencil, you cannot erase. So it's really important that you practice as soft of a value as you can, like barely skimming over the top of the paper. And then you're gonna practice that pressure where you're gonna steadily increase that pressure. Remember the skill of layering and pressure. It's the same thing, except this time we don't have the eraser to help us, so it's really a focus on layering, going light to dark. So I'm gonna start over here in this shape first, and I want there to be some white, so I'm just gonna work around the edge as soft as I can. And you can rotate your paper. I rotate my paper a lot while I'm working, especially to help avoid smudging areas. So super soft. I'm still using those small ovals to help me blend, and I'm following that outside shape. I'm gonna leave a little bit of a highlight. Very soft. I want that transition to be very light. I don't want to see a harsh line between my light gray and my white. And I'm going to keep working my way down, and I can steadily increase my pressure, so we'll see more of that pigment from that black color pencil layer on. And now that I have this area nice and smooth, I'm not gonna go over there much more. I'm gonna just kind of leave it alone. And then over here, I can start applying that pressure, getting that dark value layered in. But you wanna make sure you don't have a line or a step. So dark step, light step, so you wanna make sure you're always fading away. So I'm loosening or softening my pressure as I get away from that dark value. So heavy hand, medium, soft. And it's like a feather when I'm doing that soft area, really light value, very gentle pressure. And I just keep building and layering. And then when I want to get that black, I want to make sure I'm pressing hard enough and layering enough that I don't have any white pinholes, so no little white light leaks in there. You want to make sure that that is totally filled with the pigment. And then you fade that away so you have a smooth, gradual transition. Always changing directions, sticking with your shape. And over here I'm pressing really light. It's all about those layers, getting one layer of pigment on top of another so they just keep building. So this isn't gonna go as fast as the regular pencil because you should be slowing down and having very light values to start. Okay, so I've done one, and I had you do two because I want you to see what it looks like and feel what it looks like with your white color pencil. So where your light value is, I want you to assert a medium to heavy pressure and lay down a layer of white, and then I want you to fade it away very gentle at the end. And this white layer is gonna just put a coating of pigment down for you, and you're gonna feel a difference when you're shading with your black color pencil. So again, start really light over here, working in those ovals, leaving that area white. I can even see it like the light shining off of that white pigment. And I'm gonna get more of a gray, like a creamier gray, because I have that layer of white coating underneath. And I can feel the pencil gliding over it just a little bit more than I could on this. So working those ovals, very gentle because I want to try to avoid any lines or implied lines inside my smooth transitions. And I build this up. And one thing that's nice is once this here, I could go back and forth and I can blend with this white, but it's a little challenging to blend the white with the Crayola pencils. If you have Prismacolor pencils at home, you'll notice that it'll move a little bit easier. And a little bit more fluid for you. The Crayolas don't do quite as good of a job, but it still happens a little bit. Blending that out. And then I'll keep building up my black down on this end. And this is all pretty flat right here, so you can't really see any value change. So I'm gonna use a little bit of my white, try and add some light to this area. You can see how it changes. Layer this on top, and then I lessen my white as I get over to where it's gonna be black. And this is what you want to avoid, no big lines of demarcation. So you're gonna come back and layer it. So lots of layers, you haven't messed anything up, it's just you need an additional layer. Go back with your white and blend a little bit more. Try and fade that out with that gray. Changing directions because you want to smush those pigments together. And so you can see the difference between just the dry, so it's just one layer of just the black, and then this is the layering with the white. You get to choose what you would like to do. I'm probably going to focus on just the black color pencil. I'm not going to use the white in mine. Before I move on to coloring my hand, you could practice your little jelly bean shape, making sure you really got the hang of this. And it's your call when you're ready. You can do as many little shapes as you need to before you move on to your hand. You get to choose the amount of practice that you engage with. But know that you can't erase it, so make sure you feel pretty confident before you go on to your three-hand contour, and just practice that soft feather touch. And remember, it's all about layering. So when you're ready, you're going to make sure that you repeat the same steps that you did for the pencil. You're going to shade towards a light source, the light source you chose, and you need 9+ shapes. So this time I'm going to make sure my highlight is facing the sun. And again, any pencil lines, you can just go right over the top of them. So if I wanted to shade the tip of this finger, I'm going to start really light, and I found that sharpening my pencil really helps me get those light values. And I'm going to continue to shade following that individual shape. And you can work on the side of your pencil as well. That's another good trick. So bring your pencil down not so much on the tips so you don't get as many of those little scratchy marks. And we'll make sure we don't have a line of demarcation where the white starts transitioning into soft gray. So I build that soft gray up first. And then I'm gonna start layering in. And in the corners, because I'm really close to the light source, I'm just gonna have a tiny bit of black. Not a lot. And I'm gonna fade that away. So make sure you're not coloring it in, but that you are showing value, and that your value is doing the same thing your cross contour did. It's wrapping around the form, not going across. So curves, bending to show that the form is round and organic and not flat. So you can see here's my black color pencil towards my light source. I'm gonna pick at least 8 more shapes that I'm going to fade in, and then that will be the end of our value portion. All right guys, after you are done shading, you are going to remove all the negative space or background space behind your hands. So you could do this either with a pair of scissors and you can just cut along, or if you have an X-Acto blade, you can cut it out with an X-Acto blade. Just make sure you have some sort of mat behind it so you're not cutting directly on a table. I'm probably gonna use a combination of both my scissors and my X-Acto blade. All right, everyone, now that your freehand contour is all cut out, the negative space has been removed, you are going to get your watercolor that we worked on last class, and you are going to glue your freehand contour on top of your watercolor background. I know there'll be some extra around the paper, that's okay. You can use any type of glue you have at home. You should also have a glue stick in your bag. I'm gonna use a little bit of rubber cement, but I'd go around the borders, a little bit in the middle, and then you're going to stick it down on top of your watercolor background. That I line up the edge of my drawing with the edge of the watercolor where the tape was, and then I gently press down, but truly I don't want to rub the top because I don't want to smear any of my pencils, so I'm going to flip my painting over and I'm going to rub the back. So if you have any little things floating up, just make sure you get a little bit of glue. Don't crease where it's coming up, just curl it back a little bit, stick some on the back, or even just directly onto your watercolor paper is fine. Remember not to rub the front because you don't want to smear anything. And then you're going to photograph your work, cropping it, making sure we're going straight to the edge of our drawing, and then upload it to your Google Slides. All right guys, I look forward to seeing your work.